So we ready? Okay. Welcome, Kiwanians and guests. Judy's rocking it today on the piano. So thank you, Judy, for that lovely music. I don't know if you all saw the newspaper front page of the Roanoke Times of our wonderful event at the Roanoke Star honoring Brenda Hale last Friday. It was a great turnout for the club and the community. So thank you all for being there and seeing that. Pilgrim's grandson has finally come home from the NICU. So congratulations. Glad to hear that. And we have a great group of Kiwanians going to Baltimore to represent us at DCON. So thank you to the Hartmans, the McAvoys, the Witts, and the Montgomerys, and Hi Nicely for going as well. It's nice to see Russell Clay back in the room. So thank you. It's been a while. Good to see you guys. Our invocation today is going to be led by Dan Carnes.
Lord God and giver of all good gifts, we are grateful as we pause before this meal for all the blessings of life that you give to us. Daily, we are fed with good things, nourished by friendship and care, feasted with forgiveness and understanding. And so, mindful of your continuous care, we pause to be grateful for the blessings of this table. May your presence be the extra ingredient to this meal. Amen.
Amen. Right. Our song leader today is Don Chichester.
Our song today is by that great Yankee doodle dandy, George M. Cohan. You're a grand old flag. Okay. You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true, needs a red, white, and blue, where there's never a boast or brag. Should old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the grand old flag.
Thank you, Don. Thank you.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Our introduction to guest is one of our new members, Preston Tyler.
Well, good afternoon. Oh, y'all can do better than that. Good afternoon. I'm Preston Tyler. I'm the pastor of the Hill Street Baptist Church and one of the newest members of Kiwanis. I'm going to introduce the guests, and will the host stand up with them as well? Keely Lancaster, will you stand along with your host, Clark Goodman? And this is a prospective member. Amen. Also, we have, you go by Reverend or Pastor Jennifer Fletcher. She's pastor of the Windsor Hills United Methodist Church, and her host is Don Witt and Ken Briggs. All right. And then we have a guest, Cecil Scott, from the Virginia Department of Health, and his host is new member Milton Hardy. We just want to say welcome to Kiwanis.
All right, we do have some announcements today. Is Sherry on Zoom? Okay. How about Bob Haberman? Do you want to do your grants update? Okay.
And thanks, President Clark. As I've told you before, on June 30th, we set out 76 requests for a proposal. So far, we've gotten back about 30. The requirement was that it be submitted to us by the 15th of August, which was Monday. And we've interpreted that to mean that it must be postmarked by that date. So we're still going to the post office to see if some are in, but we're somewhere around 30, and hopefully we will have the results within the next 30 days or so. Thank you.
I'm John Montgomery, pinch hitting for Sherry Hartman, and Sherry is in Richmond today. She wanted me to share with you the latest news regarding the nature park. The first part is to say that volunteer gardeners, and we've had a crew of those this summer, need to sign up for a week at a time in September. Many of you have been to the nature park already. If you haven't yet, check it out. It's really coming along. It's located behind Forest Park Academy, close to our playground. You were to let Sherry or Cynthia Gray know that you can cover a week. Right now it's a good week to volunteer since it's raining every day, but we've had a number of people who have been dependable in doing that, and the results are showing. Also, we have a cleanup scheduled for the 27th. It'd be much appreciated if you let Sherry know by the 24th if you can help with the cleanup at Hortons Creek and Melrose Avenue. The watershed we're trying to improve. It's 10 a.m. Saturday. You can cover it in an hour, and it's a fun project. Some of my close associations with Kiwanians have started picking up trash together. And I suspect that other people in the room can identify with that. It's pretty mindless work, and you're ended up talking to the person and learning a little bit about them. It's a fun project. It doesn't take long. Sherry is the person to let know if you can help out on the 27th. Thank you.
So, good afternoon, Kiwanians. Mike McAvoy here with two announcements. First, we have our second First Fridays concert coming up. We did one back in July. It was very successful. The second one is September 2nd. The band is the Kings, which popular band around here. People have been signing up just because it's the Kings. But you have sign-up sheets on your table. So go ahead and sign in. If you're on Zoom, you can email me if you want to volunteer. We still need about 5 more volunteers. And again, that is Friday, September 2nd. It's a fairly fun event. You can either help with checking people in, selling the wristbands and everything, or just giving out beer. Will Dibling's done it before. Will's an expert, man. He knows he knows how to pour. Will knows how to pour. Let me say, he has. He's poured a beer or two in this time. So, but anyway, you're there about 4:45 to about 9 o'clock. So it's a nice evening. And then the second one is on behalf of the Kiwanis Cares Committee, and this is September 9th. The city, that's a welcoming week in the city of Roanoke, and the Library Foundation is putting on a 5K run that week, and we're helping to partner with that. So we're looking for people to both help with the event, be a marshal, help check people in, or just actually participate, sign up and do the run. That's on a Friday morning out on the Greenway. Should be beautiful. There's I have some information here, and I think, John, you've done an email maybe, or yeah, or we could do an email. It's an online registration, so you'll need to go click on that. But I have some information here if anybody would like to do that. And again, the CARES committee chaired by Wendy Mellentine is sponsoring that. So if you have any questions, just come see me. Thanks.
Miss Lois James isn't here, so we do have a membership meeting Friday morning. That's going to be a Zoom. Just come see me if you need the Zoom link. I've got it written down. And then you guys have got some bocce flyers on the table. We're doing our bocce ball tournament. It's going to be September 17th. We're doing a breakfast this time, and we're going to do Bloody Marys and mimosas. And I've got 11 teams signed up so far. Should be a lot of fun. Again, anybody can come out and play bocce. We've had children to, I think our champions last few times have been in their 80s. So again, anybody can win. So if I've actually got a list of signups up here. So if you're interested in playing bocce, just come see me. I'll be glad to put you on the list. And we have got a ton of time for brag bucks. So I know Eddie Barnes has got a brag for us today. And Preston Tyler.
Get this in the right place.
To the foundation.
Yes, sir.
I'm Eddie Barnes, if you don't know me. And I want y'all to pay this brag is actually a love story. And I want you to pay attention mainly to the dates. John, I want you to take good notes because I've designated you as the writer of the script for the Hallmark Channel. Okay.
Quite a bit of clout. Feeling good.
Okay, you're the man. Tomorrow at approximately 2:15, my wife and I will have been married 60 years. That's pretty good. I met Carolyn when I was a fresh second lieutenant platoon leader in an infantry unit in Fort Carson, Colorado. And I met her through some girls skiing and we had a good time. I had my first date with her. Pay attention to these dates. My first date with her was probably the first week in February. And when I met her, I said, this is it. I mean, I dated girls all over, but this was the one.
You knew it.
I knew I was in the right place. So anyway, make a long story. And we dated pretty steadily up until into April. And we said, hey, I asked her, and she said, yep. So this is, what is that, 2 months? We were engaged the first week in May. I had never met her parents. Her parents had I still had some time left in my tour with the military. So anyway, she goes back to Evanston, Illinois, Chicago area. And I had to finish out my tour, go into the field for a while. And so it was time for me to go to the wedding in August. This is August. Proposal, May, August, hadn't seen her. She left, and I'm there and I'm driving across Kansas and I said, God, I don't know if I really know this girl. But I'm going to think it's going to be all right because there's a lot of people coming. So I get out there to Chicago. We were there for a week before the wedding. And, you have to do certain things. Has anybody in here ever been to the courthouse of Cook County, which is Chicago? Anybody ever been in that place? It's massive. And there's 3 million people that service out of there. So we go down late morning to get our marriage license because you had to have the license for the wedding coming up that next weekend. So we get in there, and this place is a zoo. I'd hate to see what it's like today. So we're in there, and all these people coming out, and right across from where you register to get your license, there's a wedding chapel. I mean, people flowing in there. So we go up to the counter and I give them all of our paperwork. And the man looks at us and he says, you know what, young people, you're the first couple today that should be getting married. I took that as a compliment. And you know what? He was right. He was right. So anyway, we had a great day. After the license time, Colin said, well, Eddie, what do you want to do? We could have a nice lunch. We're downtown. What do you want to do? I said, well, I had checked the paper this morning and the Cubs are in town. So she said, fine with me. So we get on the L, go out to Wrigley Field. And I had never been to Wrigley Field. What a wonderful, wonderful place. I walk in, and as I'm walking in, and the young people in here don't know this guy, they announce Ernie Banks playing second base. I mean, come on, you can't get any better than that. But we had a great time. We've been very fortunate. We've been good to each other. And, 60 years. That's it. Watch for the movie on Hallmark. It'll be out in about 3 months.
What a love story. And boy, short times have changed. I don't think I could take my wife to the baseball game for the honeymoon. Oh, okay. All right. I just have a quick announcement that I want to make. As Kiwanis, we care about our children. And the school year is coming up and city schools start next Tuesday. This coming Sunday at the Hill Street Baptist Church in the parking lot, we're having an evening of prayer for our children, for our teachers, for our parents for this upcoming school year. So if you don't have anything to do this coming Sunday at 6:30 in the parking lot, weather permitting, if it's not raining, we'll be out in the parking lot. If it is raining, we'll be in the sanctuary. But come on out 6:30 as we pray for our children. I believe in prayer. I believe that if we pray for our children and we stand by our children will do great and be successful. So that's my brag buck.
Well, we still got about 10 minutes. So does anybody else like to come up and brag? Oh, great.
Oh, there goes
There goes my 10 minutes.
Is Steve McGraw here today? Steve, why aren't you here today? For 2.5 years, he left a can opener at my house. Now, it was a little after party we had after pancakes up in my house, and he brought his own beer and his own can opener. And by God, he left it there. And he told me to bring it to you at Kiwanis Club. And then every time I come to Kiwanis Club, he says, where's my can opener? And you think I was supposed to bring it. But I have brought it today.
And he's not here.
And I want you to certify that this here can opener that I've had for 2.5 years, that is Steve McGraw's, I have brung it here and he ain't here.
Well, that just tells you never know what you're going to hear up here. So anybody else? All right. Well, we can introduce our program a little early today. And I'm just going to leave. I'm not going to say a thing. I'm going to let Brooke do it all.
Good afternoon. It's great to see you all here today. I don't know if I'm more nervous introducing my husband, but we don't have anything close to what Eddie Barnes has. But tomorrow at about 5 p.m., we will celebrate our 10th anniversary. If he makes it that far, I don't know. I'm still undecided. I have known Derek my whole life, literally. We went to preschool together. And not elementary school, but middle school and high school. So, and we started dating in high school. But I needed him to print out a bio that I could read because his list of accomplishments are very long. So he was born and raised in Roanoke, and he studied military history first at Virginia Tech, where he received his bachelor's degree. And then he went on to receive his master's degree in public history from James Madison. He changed his focus completely a couple of years after we got married, which that was fun. And he graduated from Jefferson College of Health Sciences as a physician assistant in 2018, where he also received the Clinical Excellence Award. He completed the Urgent Care and Rural Health Fellowship at Carilion Clinic in 2019, and he's currently the Advanced Care Practitioner Coordinator in the Emergency Department at Franklin Memorial Hospital. So I get lots of interesting stories. Please help me welcome Derek Stackpole.
Thank you, Brooke. I appreciate that. We too went to a baseball game on our honeymoon. It's kind of a running joke. Yeah, we did. We went to New York because we're not really beach people. So we're like, we got a lot of money from wedding gifts, so we could just have a great time in New York City. And I'll never forget, it's kind of an inside joke. The Yankees weren't in town. We're not really baseball people, but we're here, so we're going to go to a game. So we go out to Queens, we go to the Mets. And this kind of just sums up Brooke's personality. She walks up, she goes, 2 of your cheapest tickets, please. My nose was bleeding because we were all the way at the top at the back, but there were some Brooklyn firefighters and their families there, and we had a wonderful time. This is a presentation I actually first gave right before the pandemic in 2019 at the University of Minneapolis at a History of Medicine conference here. It's a little academic, but I got plenty of pictures, and Brooke says it's a really smart crowd, so we're just going to go with it. And you know, I will definitely be open to questions. We can just put that there. I'm open to questions at the end. So let's begin. So I walk from our house to downtown Roanoke quite often. It takes about 20 minutes, but on the way I pass through the remnants of the city's abandoned or repurposed medical infrastructure. These buildings trace the transition of Roanoke's hospitals from privately owned business ventures located in the neighborhoods they served to larger and larger facilities run by private corporations and not-for-profit associations. Stepping off my porch and walking east down Mountain Avenue, crossing 6th Street, and continuing less than a block, I pass the 3-story brick apartment complex formerly known as St. Charles Hospital. Opened in 1913, the hospital's operational history was tied to a single man, Dr. J.C. Burke. Hospitals opened during this time frame, approximately between 1890 and 1920, reflected a shift from hospitals built by private charitable and religious organizations to small profit-making surgical centers. When their owners retired or died, they tended to close, and St. Charles fared no better. When Dr. Burks died and the United States economy fell into the Great Depression, the hospital closed sometime in the opening years of the 1930s. It has remained an apartment building since that time. My Canadian colleagues, you can't really see in this picture, it's darked out, but the stars and bars are on the 2nd floor there. So, you know, I was trying to give them an idea of what the South can entail. That resident must have moved because that is no longer in that window. I continue down Mountain Avenue and turn left onto 4th Street, walking 2 blocks to the intersection of 4th Street and Day Avenue. There in the parking lot of one of Roanoke's emergency medical services buildings, in the back of a small trailer, rests a 6-foot cylindrical object with a rusting, fading yellow paint job. An iron lung served as a negative pressure chamber, substituting for polio patients' paralyzed diaphragm. Air entered their lungs and was forcefully pushed back out as the compartment cycled. Now abandoned, this remnant of the forgotten scourge is slowly corroding via the air it helped to infuse into the lungs of so many. An insidious virus causing paralysis, polio wrought dread yearly as warmer weather approached. Although it killed fewer victims than other childhood diseases, the only public fear greater in the mid-20th century was the atomic bomb. Unlike the bomb, however, one could not dig deep enough to escape the almost miasma-like spread of the disease. The randomness of its victims reinforced its horror. One can simply look at the age range and varying locations within a single outbreak in Roanoke to understand the desire of the public for a cure. The outbreak that affected Southwest Virginia and the city of Roanoke in 44 reflects the experiences of communities across the country that had undergone such epidemics for decades. Occurring at a time of heightened patriotism, but more importantly, community participation with respect to medical resource allocation, organizations like the March of Dimes and government funding for vaccine research promoted a sense of we are in this together. On June 26, 4 days before my birthday, 1944, a little over a year before the Manhattan Project sparked the atomic age, a 7-year-old girl by the name of Joyce Martin contracted polio in Roanoke. Her medical records are lost, but her address listed on the cases reported to the health department lists her address as 1320 Dale Avenue, located in the southeast suburb of the city. Whoop, too far. So this is a map of Roanoke. I think the last census, 1930 or 1940, and the red dot at the bottom of the map is her address. The next day, Vivian Wood, an 11-year-old, developed similar symptoms. The only 2 recorded cases for the next 5 days, the virus jumped the tracks of the Norfolk and Western Railway to the northwest on July 2nd and infected a 2-year-old Bonnie Hudson and a 10-year-old Dolores Young. 8 cases would be diagnosed before the superintendent of Roanoke Hospital, Ruth Hardy, would receive a call from the city's health officer requesting the use of the hospital's isolation wing. The hospital had opened a crippled children ward in 1928, and in 1944, the epidemic would see Roanoke Hospital Association that ran the facility commit further to the treatment of polio victims. In total, the hospital would admit 76 children with polio through August of 1944. 32 would remain for months of physical therapy, and 7 found themselves relying on those iron lungs I had pictured earlier. Although Roanoke Hospital would treat children from across the area, the number of reported cases for Roanoke itself was 51. This unpredictability and high local occurrence of paralytic cases ensured Roanokers remained vigilant for signs of the disease, and memories of such outbreaks would influence their views on the eventual vaccine. So this map, I love the librarians downtown. I was in the Virginia room, and they were able to direct me online to find an actual map of the area. Success announced to the world, the vaccine was pulled from the market due to a polio outbreak in Indiana caused by tainted vaccine. Close to 220,000 people became infected with vaccine contaminated with the live polio virus manufactured at Cutter Laboratories in California, with 164 becoming severely paralyzed. The brief pause in vaccine distribution and inoculations did not cause the uproar and outcry one would expect. Can you imagine that today? 220,000 victims of a tainted vaccine. This Cutter incident sheds light on Roanoke residents' perception of poliomyelitis, medical authority, and the idea of the greater good. The fear of the disease and acceptance of medical opinion meant the isolated incident a few states away had little effect on vaccination programs here in Roanoke. On April 13th, 1955, a little over a week before reports of infected children from the Cutter vaccine made headlines, 275 Roanoke physicians watched a closed-circuit television broadcast by Dr. Salk. This broadcast, transmitted across the United States, helped to educate them on what to expect during the mass inoculations and answer questions so they could better inform their communities. After the broadcast, one of those in attendance, the secretary of the Roanoke Academy of Medicine, Dr. Horace Albertson, answered questions for WSLS News Channel 10. If that doesn't look like an old Southern Virginian physician, the bow tie, the whole thing. You can actually access WSLS archives via the UVA library. They're all digitized, and most of them are searchable on YouTube, and it's really fun. You can spend a whole afternoon looking at crime, Virginia Tech football. I mean, it's just a blast from the past, and they have all of the transcripts uploaded as well. So I'm not going to do my Southern draw impersonation, but I would say look it up and listen to him. It's wonderful. When asked if there was any danger that the vaccine may cause polio, Dr. Albinson did not hesitate in his response. Quote, "There's absolutely no danger that the Salk vaccine can cause polio. It is rigidly tested by many laboratories before it is made available to the practicing physician." When asked about the risk of adverse reactions, he replied, "The vaccine is practically 100% free of any reactions. Dr. Salk's trials have shown it to be entirely harmless." The next month, the Surgeon General would suspend vaccination programs due to the tainted vaccine. Oops. To put things in perspective, though, there were 4 major laboratories responsible for producing the Salk vaccine. When done appropriately, Albertson was right. There was no concern that you would contract polio. Unfortunately, the filtration systems were not heavily regulated at that time, and there were a lot of variations in how they produced this vaccine. So all credit to Albertson, but that's how that happened. So in interviews conducted with residents during the lapse in polio vaccinations, Roanokers made it clear they still wanted to vaccinate their children. A local man, Carson Gregory, looked at his interviewer with a sincere fatherly gaze, stating, quote, "Joe, I am the father of 3 children, and one is of school age now. He is in the 1st grade. He has received his first shot of the polio vaccine, and I am not discouraged by the report." His response is illustrative of other answers given by residents for the news cameras. Despite the Cutter incident, Roanoke's lack of proximity to the event, there was no infected vaccine that made its way to Virginia, thank goodness, and their desire to protect their children meant parents would line their kids up for the 3-shot series when the programs resumed later that year. The reactions of Roanokers when asked about the incident echoed the public's respect for medical profession in general. It also reflected the years of direct experience and panic that decades of recurring polio outbreaks had brought, to the point that most agreed that the vaccine's benefits far outweighed its risks. So that's my introduction to what the main topic of this paper is about. So here we go. The introduction of matching federal funds through the Hill-Burton Act of 1948 provided money to build hospitals in medically underserved areas and emphasized the need to produce a healthy society that could stand as a prime example for the rest of the world. The availability of such large federal funds led to the Roanoke Hospital Associations, the nonprofit organization that ran Roanoke Hospital, as well as the Society for the Crippled Children of Southwestern Virginia, to join together with the leaders of Burrell Hospital, a storied institution serving the Black community in Roanoke, to form the Hospital Development Fund. Roanoke Hospital wanted to expand its services to polio victims, and the outdated Burrell Hospital needed a new building. The authors of a joint pamphlet provided insight into their cause. They discussed the role, quote, "For 25 years, Memorial and Crippled Children's Hospital, working in close cooperation with the Society for Crippled of Southwestern Virginia, has been transforming warped and twisted little bodies," love the vernacular, "into the children who can walk and look forward to a normal life free of pain." They ended their introduction with, quote, "We cannot fail these children. We will not fail these children." And they hope to accomplish this through raising $1.5 million and adding 50 beds to the new wing. The campaign had its own poster child in the form of Bobby D. I was really hoping somebody would jump up and be like, "That's me," or "That's my brother." Who recounted his experience at the hospital. The campaign worked and construction on the new wing was completed by the end of the decade. And there's just another view of little Bobby D. I just like the headshot there. Roanoke Memorial would continue to use Hill-Burton funds through the end of the 1950s and beginning of the next decade to expand the hospital. Realizing reimbursements for patient care either directly from customers or through third parties would not cover costs for the RHA, they would expand outside of healthcare, predominantly focusing on real estate. They would end up managing other hospitals as well. By the 1980s, they would operate a rehab center, a cancer treatment center, a health club, and various housing for residents and students. They would ultimately purchase several hospitals, including Burrell Hospital, which is what I'm about to talk about. This is a screenshot from the early 1980s. An investigative reporter was doing research on how just the scope of what Roanoke Hospital Association, soon to be Carilion Clinic, would do in terms of how much real estate they owned. Founded in 1915 by 6 Black physicians in Roanoke, Burrell Memorial Hospital initially operated out of a converted cottage on First Street in downtown before moving into an abandoned school building in 1921. I love this shot. And here's a bigger picture of the old schoolhouse. By the 1950s, the old converted hospital was in disrepair, and trustees saw the federal funds available through the Hill-Burton Act as an opportunity to build a new state-of-the-art facility. The joint campaign with Roanoke Hospital Association would raise over $1.5 million needed to construct the new hospital in 1955. Unfortunately, they had difficulty collecting the funds promised to them, and the reliance on reimbursements for services rendered to patients would place the institution on unstable financial footing even before the first patients were admitted. During construction in 1954, Burrell's managing association had reported financial losses of upwards of $35,000. The rising costs of healthcare and patients' inability to pay for such services out of pocket had brought things to a crisis. To white residents, the source of the problem was clear. Writing an editorial for the Roanoke World News on April 26, 1954, an unnamed author opined, "The crux of the problem seems to be the poor rate of collection of bills. Burrell is able to achieve only 67% rate compared to an average of 85 to 90% for most hospitals. Some of the reasons for this are obvious. The hospital's patients come largely from low income brackets where the economic impact of accident or serious illness is greatest." According to this author, Black communities were poor and could not afford their own care. Race was inevitably linked to the large indigent population, and the lack of payments for medical services had the hospitals in financial trouble. Compensation for the medical needs of the poor came from city funds. In 1954, the Roanoke World News again reported that the city of Roanoke paid $10.33 for the indigent population seeking care at Burrell and $16 for one of the hospitals for white patients. Bill Hill, writing in the Roanoke Times, unwittingly hit upon a solution that the Roanoke Hospital Association would use to thrive in the coming decades. And I quote him, "Ideally, a hospital would operate on a business-like basis, but at Burrell Memorial, Administrator James H. Lewis explains the hospital cannot choose its customers. It must treat those who need help, even if they can't pay for hospitalization. The hospital had to write off $45,000 secondary to such low-income patients in 53, and this amounted to approximately a quarter of their projected budget for that year. Relying on patient reimbursement, both direct and through third-party payers, could not sustain the operating budget of the hospital. The rising costs of healthcare and increasing reliance on patients on insurance to afford services meant that the hospitals had to find other ways to fill the gaps. Burrell's trustees doubled down and focused primarily on inpatient services and providing the best care, as we all want to do. At the time it opened Burrell, they had a staff of 6 doctors, including specialists in ENT, OB-GYN, and pediatrics, and there were 30 physicians in the valley with privileges at the hospital. And the building still stands. That's what I love about this, is you can actually go and look at this hospital. I've not been inside, but I've kind of gone around and taken pictures of it. But this is from 56, right after it opened. Burrell Hospital's gleaming modern facade hit the financial woes of the institution. As one observer noted, the oversubscription during the joint Burrell Crippled Children's Hospital campaign meant the hospital could proceed with breaking ground, but a lag in pledge payments after the start of construction made it necessary for trustees to borrow $150,000 to meet construction costs. The hospital's stability revolved around the ability of patients to pay for services rendered, with 75% of estimated revenue coming from patients' fees, both direct and through payers like Blue Cross and Blue Shield. The outgoing administration of the hospital, James H. Lewis, pointed out, however, that only 20% of the Black population had Blue Cross coverage, in contrast to 75% of the white population. Integration did not initially threaten the leaders of Burrell Hospital. They saw integration as a two-way street. Dr. Lawrence E. Paxton, the dentist and chairman of the hospital's board of trustees, dismissed the likelihood that Black Roanokers would prefer Roanoke Memorial over Burrell, quote, because we have got as good as a hospital on this side as they have got on the other side, end quote. In the same article quoted above, he championed Black residents' ability to seek medical care at Roanoke Memorial based on the shared campaign that had built Burrell. A North Carolina court case involving hospitals that had received Hill-Burton money had recently found African Americans had the right to use those facilities because they had used federal funds. The Civil Rights Act of '64 would fully integrate both institutions. Thank you, Johnson. By that time, the hospital had 100 doctors on staff, with only 8 of them African American. From '64 to '75, over a decade of integration had taken its toll. The newspaper articles written during this period and the staff quoted tended to blame a combination of the Black population's reluctance to use the hospital and doctors' lack of referral for their facilities. Joan Poindexter, writing an article for the Roanoke Times that year, argued, quote, the stigma of being a Black hospital has been a factor in the low occupancy rate of the hospital. Trustees and doctors said only about 60% of its beds are ever filled. Dr. Maynard H. Law, a longstanding Black physician at the time, felt the problem predominantly fell on physicians not sending their patients there and the Black population's willingness to go across town to Roanoke Memorial. He's quoted as saying, quote, it didn't occur to me that the day would come when Blacks would accept that white institutions with the acceptance that they do today. In '78, hospital officials submitted a proposal to convert the building into a home for adults. Previous plan budgeted at just shy of $1 million to convert the 3rd and 4th floors into nursing home and keep the remaining 2 floors as a general hospital. These were not approved by the health commissioner. He argued the region already had an adequate number of nursing home beds and the 3 largest hospitals. Therefore, Burrell had few alternatives. The facility would file for bankruptcy the following year. The building would eventually be purchased by the expanding Hospital Association for $150,000 in 1980, and they would gain approval to operate the facility as a nursing home in 2001. In the opening years of the 21st century, the rebranded RHA, now known as Carilion, operated Burrell at an annual loss of $1.5 million. From a business standpoint, Carilion could not continue to do so, and the decision was made to cut losses and donate the property to Blue Ridge Behavioral Health Care. The organization helped around 12,000 patients with mental health concerns through counseling and other programs. The move would strengthen services in the community, according to Carilion, and make the nonprofit more financially stable. Although it appeared to benefit both parties, the African-American community residing in the neighborhood and the surrounding area felt the building itself had been taken from them. Protests held in front of Roanoke Memorial Hospital after the decision was announced found Black residents holding signs with slogans like "Principle before money" and Floyd W. Davis, pastor of High Street Baptist Church and chairman of the Committee for Community Preservation, council set up to preserve sites significant to African-American heritage, discussed his reservation about the transfer. Ultimately, Davis centered his argument around the lack of heritage grounded in the commons. He's quoted as saying, when we survey our community, where is the history? Where are the buildings? Where are the stories and the people? Who controls the buildings? Who safeguards the stories? And who is caring for those who still live, who are part of creating that history? Ironically, the building's historical significance would benefit Blue Ridge and its renovation of the hospital. In September of 2003, Burrell was listed on the National Register of Historic Places, secondary to its role in Black history and medicine in the Valley. The designation allowed Blue Ridge Behavioral Health Care to offset some of the costs of the building, $7 million for this restoration, via tax credits that would ultimately cover approximately 45% of the project. As a not-for-profit entity, Blue Ridge Behavioral Health Care could cash in tax credits by selling them to another party. Kind of want to know who they sold the tax credits to. That'd be interesting. The significance of the building's legacy had not saved it from closing its doors, but turned history into capital. Ultimately, what I'm trying to kind of piece together through this paper is Burrell focused on creating patient-focused service and quality care. It was a good hospital. But relying solely on payments for patient care led to its inability to survive increasing costs. The RHA realized early on the inability of patients and third-party payers to compensate them, so they transitioned to other healthcare-related services early on to ensure other sources of income. So that's it. Thank you all. Questions? Yes. I'm not familiar with vaccination rates in our area, and I'm assuming we're talking about the New York. They found polio virus in the sewage. This actually goes way back to the 1950s, and we can kind of dive into that. So there was the Salk vaccine, which I talk about, which is, you know, the shot in the arm, the inoculation. How many people remember getting the shots in the arm? Anybody? Yeah, hurt, didn't it? And then the Sabin vaccine, which was an oral vaccine. And the thought was, we have an oral vaccine, it's easier to take. It's easier to get people to sign up for that. But the problem is the Sabin vaccine ends up shedding virus into, sorry, we just ate, but feces, right? So it's communicable through the sewage. And what we're finding in New York in the isolated case a couple of months ago is the person had received the oral vaccine. We do not use the oral vaccine in the United States, but other parts of the world do. And therefore it got into the sewage. 2020 and 20 through today, really the lack of vaccine drives and stuff is related to COVID-19. But we still recommend, and pediatricians still inoculate against the polio virus. So thank goodness for that. But that's kind of where we're at. I don't know the specific rates for vaccination in our area. And I think in the county in New York right now, that vaccination rate is around 37%. So it's a lower vaccination rate than the rest of the country. Other questions? All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me come.
Derek, that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. We do have a speaker honorarium for you guys, and you guys have picked the Roanoke Valley SPCA. So what a great cause. Bring that over to you guys. So next week we have Greg Brock with Firefly. It's going to be a digital marketing program. And we are actually about 10 minutes early. So you guys, we are adjourned. Thank you.